Hey there, my name is Ron Pereira, and I'd like to welcome you to this first module of our A3 Thinking course. Well, during this course, we're going to explore how A3 thinking can positively impact any organization, no matter the industry. And we're also going to share real-world case studies and testimonials of different organizations that have benefited from the use of A3s. But to get things started, we need to cover some important introductory concepts. Well, specifically, by the end of this module, you'll know what an A3 report is and how it's used to tell a story. Additionally, you'll understand why the A3 document in and of itself isn't a magic bullet. And finally, by the end of this module, you'll understand the many different ways A3 documents can be used beyond basic problem solving. Okay, well, let's get started by explaining what an A3 report is, as well as where it gets its name from. At its most basic level, the A3 is a single-page report that's used to tell a story of how a problem or situation was improved by the methodical application of PDCA, which, as we'll review shortly, stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. Well, the document gets its name from the A3 size of paper, which is 297 millimeters by 420 millimeters, or approximately 11 inches by 17 inches. Now, with this said, the power isn't in the exact dimensions of the paper. Instead, it's the fact that the summary of what's being reported is shared on a single piece of paper, as well as a few additional benefits we'll discuss shortly. Well, done correctly, the thinking that goes into creating an A3 allows a team to identify the most critical elements of a problem or situation by following the PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act process. Along these lines, there's one important point that we'd like to stress. And this point is that the A3 document, in and of itself, isn't going to solve problems or improve anything for that matter. Instead, it's the critical thinking, collaboration, and the following of the PDCA process that actually adds value. Now, with this said, if you haven't already done so, please watch our course on practical problem solving, where we explore the PDCA topic in great detail before moving through the rest of this A3 thinking course. To be sure, this A3 course is meant to complement the PPS course. Next, it's important to realize that the format of the A3 is flexible, but the A3 creation process is standard. In other words, there's no golden A3 template that must be used, since the A3 isn't a rigid template at all. Instead, it's a report meant to tell a story. And just like a great series of books, every A3 report is slightly different. Now, there are many different ways A3 reports can be leveraged, including problem solving, where a team may focus on things like quality escapes and safety incidents. A3s can also be used to help a team justify capital expenditures. In other words, instead of simply asking to buy a new $1 million machine, the team could use the A3 thinking process to carefully analyze the situation in a fact-based manner. In a similar way, when an organization feels like they need to hire additional employees, A3s can be used to help make their case. Next, A3s can be used to help with project planning, as well as to document annual plans. In fact, we cover the use of A3s during the strategic planning process in our Hoshin Planning course, so please be sure to view that if you're interested in learning more. And while it's true that the A3 can be used for these types of situations, the natural question is, well, why bother? And while there are many different benefits of using A3s, some of the most significant is that all the information can be found on one single page. Well, this helps us keep things concise and to the point. It also helps us maintain focus on what's actually important. The A3 also allows us to use visuals and charts in a concise manner. And like we've mentioned before, the collaboration and consensus building that occurs throughout the process can be especially powerful. Now, with this said, let's spend some time breaking a typical A3 report down. Now, this particular example focuses on problem solving, but as we've already learned, the A3 report can be used for many different situations. Well, to start, the header section is used to identify the theme or topic of the A3. We may also note information such as the name of the area, the process, and the company in this section. Next, we describe the current state in this section. In other words, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? We'll also use this section to identify the gap between the target and actual condition. In this section, we document background and support data. This is where we share facts and figures. And when possible, it's always helpful to use charts and graphs since, as they say, a picture isn't indeed worth 1,000 words. Now, up to this point, we've only focused on describing the current state of the process. In this section, we're going to focus our efforts on root cause analysis. Again, we cover the 8-step practical problem-solving process in great detail in our PPS course, so please be sure to view this course if you're not familiar with this process. But as a review, during this step, we'll use tools like the 5 Why analysis in order to better understand the root cause or causes of the problem. And to be sure, this root cause analysis should always lead to action. And this action plan will be documented in this section. We will note the countermeasure or countermeasures for each root cause. We'll also note who is responsible for the action, what the action is, and when it'll be done. At this point, it's time to check the results and verify whether the countermeasures were successful. We'll once again note who is responsible for doing this, while also noting when it'll be done, how it'll be done, and how often it'll be done. So, like we mentioned earlier, the layout of the A3 is definitely flexible, but the content shown here should be addressed no matter what kind of A3 you're working on. Now, to put this into context of the PDCA process, the left side of this A3 is really focused on the planning phase, meaning we typically spend most of our time describing the problem in background while seeking to identify root causes. Well, the right side of this A3 is where we focused on the do phase, which, as we already mentioned, is when we seek to implement countermeasures for each root cause. And last, but certainly not least, we move into the check and act phases as we seek to verify whether the countermeasures were effective. And no matter if these countermeasures are effective or aren't effective, we'll always learn something worth sharing with others. And taking it one step further, when we look at this example with respect to the 8-step practical problem-solving methodology, we see that the first 5 steps of clarifying the problem, breaking down the problem, setting a target, analyzing root causes, and developing countermeasures are documented on the left side of the report. We then document the results of seeing these countermeasures through before evaluating the results and processes, as well as standardizing the success on the right side of the report. But like we said, there is no golden A3 template that must be used, so it's entirely possible that your A3 may be laid out like this, with the plan and do activities along the top and check and act activities along the bottom. Or perhaps a team may choose a 3-column layout with planning information on the left, do activity in the middle, and check and act activity on the far right. So again, the layout of the A3 is extremely flexible. Okay, well, the last topic that we like to cover in this introductory lesson is how large or complex situations can be broken down into smaller sub-projects using what are called parent and child A3s. For example, let's say that we're working on a customer service improvement project where 2 major actions are identified: improve response time and problem resolution effectiveness. In this situation, we could create 2 child A3s that focus on nothing but these 2 initiatives. Okay, well, that wraps up this introductory module on A3s. If you take one key point from this lesson, we'd like it to be that the power of the A3 isn't in the size or formatting of the paper. Instead, it's the thinking that goes into creating the piece of paper that actually matters. Now, in coming modules of this course, we're going to walk through some specific examples of A3 as we work to better understand the critical thinking that went into creating them. So, we'll speak to you soon.